The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we are joined by friend of the show, Adrian Healey, to review the offseason and answer listener questions. We'll also cover all of the Austin FC news of the week. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and you touched on it. It is always amazing to have Adrian Healey as a friend of the show, and in the segment we recorded that we will play later, like you told him that, and I always love that. But, you know, last week, I think we should talk about that. We do these roster rules episodes. This is the second time we've done it. And I often go into the show thinking it's like just for us and like the sickos. And then a bunch of people download it and we get a ton of positive feedback. So either we're doing a good job of making it accessible or there are like more sickos in this world than we believe there to be.
Yeah, I was quite nervous. I felt good about our preparation, which was not always the case when we get into stuff like this. But I still kind of thought it was a mistake and that nobody would care. And the fact that people did care and tuned in and actually liked it, do you know what that says about our listenership, Jeremiah?
They're smarter than your average bear, I think.
That they nasty. They nasty. They love this dirty stuff.
Yeah, people seem to love that take too from you.
Yeah, if you're a weirdo who likes this stuff, you're in the right place. We maybe even turned you into one of these weirdos. If we did, you're welcome, and I'm sorry. But also, one thing I will say as well is if you are in soccer communities who are paying attention to MLS, be it group chats or whatever else, like if you think someone you know would be interested in learning more about MLS roster rules, share this show with them. Give them the timestamp, even if they don't care about Austin. We use Austin examples, but we didn't go too Austin specific on any of it. So if you know someone that would find it useful, share it with them as well. All right, we're gonna get to listener questions with Adrian Healey, but first we're gonna rip through all the news of the week real quick. What should we start with, Jeremiah?
All right, let's start with the Austin FC signs Guilherme Biro to an extension. So this is now one additional year. So he was already signed through the end of 2026. This extends through 2027 with an option for 2028. Originally arrived in Austin from Mirassol in Brazil. Beirut 24. So I'm glad that they named the right guy.
Right?
Yeah, they named the right age of the right guy in the press release. So senior.
I'm happy with this one.
Yeah, senior designation, international designation continues. Yeah, nothing but joy on this move. And still at the end of this thing, he's like 27, 28. Like,
yeah,
no downside to this move with a guy that had a great first year.
Yeah, young, cheap, promising. Extend him. I'm happy with that.
For sure. All right, then the next one we get news out. So this news breaks on Sunday. Well, I guess on Friday, news breaks from Gavin Wolff on the Instagram goodbye post to everybody. Very sweet how many different academy and second team players responded to the post. And as far as I could tell, he wrote back to every single one of them with lots of love and inside jokes. So we get that. So, you know, I think the general belief is that this means that Josh Wolff's going to announce he's getting another job somewhere else. And then just for the, you know, Copa Tejas vibes, the immaculateness of it, we get this news on Sunday afternoon that Josh Wolff is going to be an assistant coach. I guess sort of the main assistant coach, right? The Davy Arnaud of the Houston Dynamo. Is that the news that we got?
I think so. I didn't see exactly what his position would be, but yeah, this isn't entirely surprising. He has a long history with Ben Olsen. They played together and then coached together in DC. And both of them have talked about being friends and still keeping in touch. So this is not entirely surprising that he's going to go there. I did want to touch on the Gavin Wolff stuff, though. We talked about this. Like, would it take long enough for Josh to get a job that we could kind of lock Gavin in here? And the answer is now clearly no. But we did get the news. I think Tom Bogert reported this initially. Did the club actually make an announcement about this or two, or no?
I believe that we've seen it from Bogert, and I don't know where else. I don't know that we got an announcement from the club, which I feel like we should know that, but
in any case,
that official yet.
The report was that Austin is keeping is it a 20% sell on and then up to 100K in allocation money, depending on certain metrics that were not disclosed. So that is something that I did not really foresee, is us, like, even if he leaves this early and is still part of the academy, that we would still have some sort of rights to him. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I don't remember. I kind of thought the idea that like if your dad was the coach, you're in the academy, you got to kind of move with him as you see fit. So I don't know if it has to do with the fact that like Josh wasn't the head coach at Houston or what, but whatever speculative return Austin might get, it seems like good business.
We also got news Damian Loss is going back out on loan to Louisville City. Not entirely surprising, right? Given Brad Stuver is Brad Stuver. We've got a veteran who seems to be okay with being the backup in Stephen Cleveland. A guy like Damian Loss needs to play, and it wasn't going to happen here with as long as Stuver is still performing like he does. So this just seems like a logical solution, and hopefully Damian can keep growing.
Yeah, and for the second year in a row, we kind of got the divorced parent announcement where we get the announcement that Damian's going to Louisville right before Louisville comes to Austin.
They come pick him up here.
Yeah, come pick him up. They meet at the McDonald's. That's at Q2. So I don't know if this is just like a money saving move so that like Louisville gets to fly him back and Austin doesn't have to pick up the cost or what it is. But yeah, it's just kind of funny and not relevant to the world at all that this has happened twice in a row now.
Austin did play Louisville City in a friendly at Q2 the other day. Do you know if Damian played in that game?
So I think he did, judging based upon the haircut of the keeper from one of the short goal videos I saw.
Okay.
I feel like Handsome Boys Modeling Football Club would probably be judging me for not knowing exactly whether it was him or not at this moment in time. But yeah, I think that he ended up playing in that match, which ended up being 3-1. Brendan Heinzike, Diego Rubio, and Danny Pereira off it was like a ball that that hit the post from who was it that hit the post?
Bukhari hits the post, right. And Danny cleans it up and beats the keeper. Yeah. So again, friendly. I guess let's go to this the press availability, which kind of ties into this friendly.
That's what I say. I wanted to get the results of the friendly before we got back into this great quote from Nico about the preseason. Yeah. Go ahead now. Sorry.
Great to see the 3-1 victory, but what does Nico say we should think about it? And this was before the game actually happened, but just his views on friendlies in the preseason.
Yeah, this is before. This is before the game. This is for him. This is actually from the Verde All Day. I mean, this is a direct quote, but to give credit to Phil West and Moises for putting in the newsletter, he said, "In my experience, preseason is a liar. I think everyone wants to see a great product out there and wins and everything, but it's a moment to try new things, to learn about the players, to give opportunities to young players. So don't read anything into the thing we just talked about, and probably the next thing we're going to talk about."
Yeah, I think talking about the young players, we're seeing pictures of Micah Burton, Irvin Torres, the draft picks, and Diego Abarca, I think, has played in some of these friendlies, who's a Austin FC 2 player. So some of these youngsters are getting those minutes, which is good to see which ones, maybe some of them end up being contenders and get some time with the first team. At the very least, it's good experience for them, so that's good to see. Also, we talked about Brandon Vasquez bullying USL players. That goal that Danny Pereira scored, there's one of the few clips that we got on the back end of this, which was Bukhari just roasting a dude in the box and then putting in a shot across the face of goal, hits the post, falls to Danny, and he finishes it. Agree with Nico that preseason is a liar, but fun to have players that can reliably bully USL players.
Right. And if you're going to have the choice between winning these games and losing these games, like we talked about, end up on the winning edge. Just know that I believe that Danny Houston and Roddy Redis have both led Austin FC in preseason goals at some point in their career. So maybe don't read in too much individual results, but overall, it's good to see the guys get action. And I think that point about the young players is great. He also talked about Uzuni's flexibility and seemed to push a little bit back on whether he's a winger or a forward, he's the same player. What did you take out of these comments? It's like, oh, he was a winger and then became a forward, but he can do more than people are giving him credit for, I think was really the point of the comment.
Yeah, this was a question that I got to go to this one. This was a question that I asked about, like, where do you see the chances coming from? And we'll get into this with Adrian. a bit later on. But yeah, he seems to think that Uzuni can be one of the guys that creates chances and not just be a goal finisher or like a goal scorer. Can be a creator as well. So that'll be interesting to see once he gets here. I got to this media availability, and I was the first one to arrive, and then they took us back to where they do the media availability, and it was just me and Ann Parker Coleman from, I think she's KView, I think KView, one of the TV stations. But we were the only ones there. And I usually see like the moon tower role in any of these press conferences is to ask a very specific question that nobody else is going to ask. And then I realized, like, okay, we're starting and it's just two people here. I should probably rethink some of the questions I'm going to ask. But then Colby from The Statesman and Moises got there just as soon as we started and bailed me out and let me be the very specific kind of nerd that I wanted to be instead. So thanks to them.
So thanks then for asking normie questions so you could be you. Okay, got it. Yeah,
And Parker did a great job as well. She's a welcome addition.
that's great. The other news we got, I think this is today, is that we kind of knew this, but 2 of the 3 Coachella Valley Invitational matches are going to be streamed on AustinFC.com. So the first one is going to be against the LA Galaxy on Wednesday, February 5th. Second one, Saturday, February 8th versus St. Louis. This will be a chance to actually see some of these guys play and see how they move, get a little more about what's going on other than the short highlights. And then do we feel like this is the point in the offseason where we start seeing more of what we should actually start to see from the regular season, or is that like still maybe another week out?
I don't know. I wish I would have gone back and looked at lineups from last year's Coachella Invitational to see what the lineups were then. I feel like we got closer to what would eventually be a starting 11, but I don't know if it was entirely because you remember, I think Jimmy Farkerloon ended up scoring like 3 goals in that tournament last year or something. And everyone was like, he's going to be amazing. And then he ended up being a pretty good Austin FC 2 player. But again, preseason is a liar. Let's not take too much of it. But I hope you're right that we do start to see a little bit more of like, okay, at least what does the 11 look like? What kind of shapes are we going to see out of this team? And what are they going to look, or at least get a better idea of what they're going to look like on February 22nd.
Yeah, but I kind of remember, and this again could be wrong, is that from this invitational is where you started seeing like they were still only playing 45 minutes, but you're starting 11-ish. We're all playing together for 45. And I feel like Jimmy's goals came in the second half when everybody was rotational, which somebody can probably correct us on if it's not right. 2 guys that we will not see, that we're going to talk a lot about with Adrian, is Mircea Uzuni and Sabovic, both still not in town. I think Nico talked about this during the presser, right? Didn't he touch on that? The fact that they weren't in yet? And then we could just know from training videos and highlights and photos and whatever that neither of these guys have been there, and know from the fact that there has not been like a welcome event or anything. So
Right.
not in town. And then like at what point do you start worrying?
Yeah, I mean, normally these types of things are fairly straightforward and just take a little bit of time. You'd expect it to be a few weeks by the time they get their visa and then get prepared to come and move. With all the uncertainty in the federal government at the moment, I like this. It might really be a problem. I think U.S. consulates in other countries were already a little bit understaffed, and I'm sure all the stuff happening in the government at this point is it's certainly not making their lives easier. And so I don't think this is going to be a thing where like these guys can't get visas. I think they're pretty low risk profiles as far as that goes. Like they're high skilled people coming on a work visa. That process is pretty straightforward, and I don't think that's going to change. But timelines could change if the consulates are backed up. They can't get appointments. The people there don't have enough time to get through all their stuff they're trying to get through. Maybe it gets pushed back. And like, I don't know what the answer is. Like, what is your point of panic here?
My point of panic is moved to after the start of the season. Honestly, at this point, like I think if they get here to get any training, that's amazing. I mean, again, the season starts less than 20 days from now. For 3-4 games in, and they're still not here. That's a problem. I think what you've hit on is really the most important thing. Like as a fan, it's sort of a symptom of general dysfunction and not like something specific to anything to do with these two guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be ideal if they were like here long enough to be available to play on match day 1. I get more and more worried each match day that that's not true. And if we're even if they get there that week, like that's still not great. It's going to take them a bit to get settled in. It would be wonderful if they could get here in the next week or two.
Yeah, let's move on from that. That makes me sad. We don't need to talk about that. So you have a note in here about transfer window date clarification. I think this is around the fact that most European windows are mostly closed, right? Or closing. The MLS window stays open until April 23rd. So maybe just talk about why closing dates matter as far as the effect on a roster.
Yeah, I've just seen some like confusion in various places online about what windows closing means. And the window only affects incoming transfers. And so, yes, most European windows are closing today, February 3rd, or sometime this week. MLS's window is open until April 23rd. We can still buy players from wherever we want because we are the incoming club. We can still add players from anywhere. Where those windows being closed does start to matter is that, let's say, a team in England or Spain or wherever, that someplace whose window does close this week, we try to buy one of their players, they are less likely to sell him to us because they can no longer replace him. Like if it's someone they need to replace, they can't do it anymore because their window is closed. That is why it affects us. That being said, there are still a lot of like the Nordic countries, like far North Europe, they have a reverse season kind of like MLS does. And so their windows are still open. And that is one of the things we've still been seeing is some more rumors of Austin being interested in players from some of those northern leagues popping up this week. One of them being Bersant Salina, a player from Kosovo, who's a midfielder for AIK in Sweden. That one, I think the link came from the player saying, Austin approached us, we weren't interested. And so that one seems to be done anyway. The other one, which I'm not sure of the reliability of the sources on this one, but Bartosz Kapuska is a Polish midfielder playing for Legia Warsaw. Not widespread reporting on this one, so I don't know how reliable it is. I think it's a possibility that these guys were Sabovic backups, or maybe the guy we were going for instead of Sabovic. And now that we did sign Sabovic, maybe these guys aren't happening. But folks who are less math averse and have kind of done some of the calculating, like the North End podcast and some other folks, believe that Austin has enough money to still sign potentially even like a TAM player, so like a pretty high money player. So it's possible Austin is still shopping and could still bring in another player.
But Austin does not have an international slot, right? So like,
correct.
Those particular players Austin cannot get.
There could be green cards in the works. Like we don't know what's happening there, so that's potential too. But yeah, you're right. An international spot would have to open up, which I think leads in well to our next topic as well.
Yeah, let's do it, because this is one that we teased last week. We talked about the cash trades and how there was a potential for roster building, and Long talked about, and you both talked about the kinds of players that would maybe be options for this kind of interleague cash trade. And we got the first two that over the weekend. Was it Jack McGlynn and Davon Joveljic? Both got traded, and they were both exactly the types of profiles of players that you would think would be up for that. So I don't remember exactly what the terms were, but it's like millions of dollars in cash.
Yeah, I think McGlynn was like $2 million. I don't remember what Jovelic's number was, but Joveljic is very much like we talked about Chicho Arango, Brandon Vasquez, like these guys who, if they're going to leave their MLS club, are probably not going to be able to stay in the league. This mechanism changes that, and Joveljic is a great example. This is where Austin not having international slots could still make sense, where Austin maybe could go after a domestic player or a player already in the league that either is American or has a green card, and use this cash transfer thing and not have to have an international spot. We do have that senior roster spot, and that's all we would need in that case. So that would be an interesting thing to watch out for too, is if Austin is going to be active in that market this offseason.
I think the last piece of news before we go into break, this is one of these things we thought we would probably talk about more, is U.S. Open Cup and Leagues Cup changes. And just because it's been so newsy, we haven't really got into depth on that, but we did get news from Major League Soccer. I think they posted the list of the different teams for different competitions. So Austin is officially in U.S. Open Cup and not in Leagues Cup. And there's a little bit of quirk around how that came to be. So why don't you cover that?
Yeah, so Austin is officially going to be playing in the U.S. Open Cup. The wrinkle you're mentioning is that Vancouver was supposed to be playing in Leagues Cup, but because they won the Canadian Championship last year, they chose to bow out of Leagues Cup and play in the Canadian Championship instead. And so MLS has kind of told the teams that they can play in two of these competitions, and those competitions are Leagues Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup, U.S. Open Cup, and then the Canadian Championship, which is their domestic cup. They're only letting teams play in two of those, and so they may have qualified for more than that, but they can only play in two. Vancouver chose Canadian Championship over Leagues Cup. By the rules of qualification, Austin FC should have been the next team up to get bumped into Leagues Cup. They were not, and instead gave the spot to San Diego because of reasons. I guess just because they're the new team, they're close to Mexico. Maybe it would be an interesting dynamic there. Under different circumstances, I feel like I might feel hard done by. This year, for strategic and emotional purposes, I'm pretty happy we're playing in only U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I could be irritated by the mechanism, but I prefer U.S. Open Cup over Leagues Cup. So, yeah, maybe we'll get to go back to San Antonio or North Texas SC or somewhere like kind of fun and different like that to watch a match, which I would prefer. And then also for this Austin team, I feel like that level of competition is what they need to be playing against this year. While you have a bunch of new guys who are getting to know each other, it seems like the U.S. Open Cup competition is going to be like better for gelling and getting what Austin needs out of their players.
Yeah, and then like in some of those earlier rounds, you could potentially mix in some of the younger guys and give them minutes. And yeah, Austin in this rebuild year, I think it's going to be good for them to not have all these competitions and all these games stretching them thin. So that's the strategic part of it. The selfish part is I just think U.S. Open Cup is fun. And
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm glad we're going to be in it. But Austin is also confirmed as hosting their first round. So all the MLS teams will enter a few rounds in, and they decided to go ahead and set hosting so that those teams can prepare and kind of market these games. And Austin is going to be hosting that first round. I think the second round could still be up in the air, but we are going to have at least one round at Q2 Stadium in the Open Cup.
Yeah, I think part of that comes with the fact that Austin owns its own stadium and is in control of the schedule in the stadium, which is always going to be to Austin's advantage when it comes to competitions like this.
Yeah, we're not going to get bumped by a circus or something.
Yeah, monster truck rally. It's my favorite.
All right, I think that's all for the news. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with Adrian Healey, and we're going to answer listener questions. So hang tight. We'll be right back. Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education, and they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances, That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. We are thrilled to be joined once again by Mr. Adrian Healey. Adrian, last time you were on, we were announcing your official departure from Austin, and now we're announcing your official return to Austin, and we're very happy to do so.
I just want to keep you two on your toes. That's my main goal. And if news can break on a Monday that I'm back in Austin, even better. But we're back in Austin. I'm absolutely delighted to be back. It's all good. It's all for good reasons. I'm very gainfully employed with ESPN, doing even more La Liga than ever. It's just ironic that it's actually easier to do it from the US than it is from Spain. So here we are, and it's almost like starting all over again in this great city, which is fabulous.
Well, today we're going to do things a little bit differently than when we've had you on. We still want to get all of your opinions on off-season stuff and kind of the transition into the 2025 season, but we're going to do it today in the form of listener questions. We've had really busy shows lately just because there's so much news going on, and I'm sure there's lots we've missed and haven't had time to talk about, so we wanted to give our Patreon members a chance to let us know what they wanted to hear. So we're going to go through it, cover it that way. This first one, it's not a question. It's just a very nice comment that I wanted to start the show and give some good positive energy here. This is from Mark Stein. Mark says, I just wanted to say thank you for continuing to put together the best Austin FC podcast through our team's ups and downs while you still work day jobs. In addition to the weekly banner and education, you keep our section mates and I texting and staying connected during the off season. Keep it up. Thanks so much, Mark. That's very nice of you. And genuinely, it does. I know I'm sure I speak for Jeremiah here saying that it does us a lot of good to hear that people like the show, because sometimes in those downs that you mentioned, it's hard to do this every week. So thank you for the kind words.
I would second what Mark says there. Just how treasured you guys are by the entire fan base, which I now consider myself one of. And I know how much work doing something like you do is every week. And to do it the way you do is it's a tremendous thing to have. So I second Mark's words. Everyone thinks the same way. So keep it up, guys.
Well, that means a lot coming from Mark and means a lot coming from you as well, Adrian. All right, Jeremiah, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's start with the first question. This is from St. Blaine. It says, with all the excitement of the new signings, what are the chances that we start the season on fire like 2022? Or is it more likely going to be a boring, slow start while all the guys learn to gel with each other? I'm interested in this one because between the summer and this offseason, there are a bunch of new starters, but also it seems like this league has a lot of turnover every year. So I'd be really interested in either of y'all's perspective and what fans should expect to look forward to coming into 2025. And I think we'll say with the assumption that the two new guys do make it into the country for the opening of the season, because it's a very different question if that is not the case.
Yeah. Do you want me to dive in first, Landon?
Yeah, go for it.
To me, this is one of the most tantalizing questions. I mean, I think we're all thrilled and really excited about the prospects now for this team longer term. But it ain't easy putting a new team out in the field. I don't care how much money you've spent, and we've seen countless examples in MLS over the years that sometimes actually it's harder the more money you spend. You're putting in new pieces in place, particularly in the offensive half of the field where it does take time. And I don't care how talented the players are and how good the game plan is. It might take time. Now it might not. I mean, they may come out of the traps flying, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised to see, my late February and March be kind of a bedding in period where perhaps the results aren't as fabulous as they were in 2022. I mean, that was pretty exceptional, wasn't it?
And the next question gets into like why those reasons might be, but I'll just say simply that I have no idea what to expect because this is Major
No.
League Soccer, and it is entirely unpredictable. So I could see either of these things happening, and I will not be surprised by either of these things happening.
Yeah,
This next question is from. Sorry, go ahead, Jeremiah.
Oh no, so the only thing I'm going to add to that is, I mean, it is a more talented team. So generally, in the aggregate, you would think that things are going to go better more than worse, but it's just such a weird league that you do never know. I'll agree with that. And bringing in a new coach, right? A new coach too, who hopefully has a system that speaks more to the players. I think we get into this later too, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, so
Right.
This transitions well into the next question from Alex Modney. He says, "Hope is higher than Azarda's preseason interview. For the fans, that want to come back down to earth, can you offer some plausible reasons why Austin finishes bottom half of the table again that doesn't involve the groin demon?" So we're going to ignore injuries, and let's give some realistic reasons why Austin might not be as good as we hope they are. I know that I can have the I don't know if it's a full-on reputation, but I can play the role of wet blanket at times on this podcast. So before I do that, because I am going to do that, let me say that I am quite excited about this team. I think I'm high on the talent level of a lot of the new signings, if not all of the new signings, and really excited to see them get on the field. But there are reasons to keep expectations measured on this season. One of them you just mentioned, Adrian, relying on players that are new to MLS, new to the country, to play big roles for us. So, Sabovic, Uzuni specifically, are they going to be able to get in, get settled, and start contributing immediately, or are they going to need some time? I think that's going to be a really big question.
Yeah.
My other one is about the defense. So,
right.
Defensively, our back line is overall pretty unremarkable, defensively speaking. And so we've upgraded the midfield, but we didn't sign a ball-winning monster defensive mid. So like, is an improved focus and structure in the defense and adding a few smart players enough to fix the defense? Or are we going to be missing that one dominant center back or that one like ground eating, crunching tackle, inducing midfielder?
Yeah. I share your concerns. I mean, if I was going to pick a reason why it wouldn't go as well as we all hope and think it might be able to, then I think you've nailed it, Landon. Defensively is the one area of the pitch we haven't improved, and we were, middle of the pack last year. I think that's fair to say. Defensively, I mean, we haven't really added anything in that department because all the attention has been at the other end of the field. Now, can we go out and win games 3-2 and 4-2? And there's the possibility for that. I do think that the centre of midfield is going to be a big upgrade. I know you were downplaying it a bit there, Landon, but I believe Ilya Sanchez and Basar Sabovic may actually be of all the signings, they may be the two key ones. I mean, if they can provide that bedrock in the centre of the park, we could look a whole lot more solid than we did defensively last year. And so that's actually what I'm kind of excited to find out the answers to. Can they provide that right from the word go?
What about you, Jeremiah? What are your concerns?
I mean, building on top of the things that y'all have already talked about, I think one of the biggest ones, and it touches a little bit on Ilya Sanchez, is like Father Time is undefeated. And there's some guys that Austin's going to rely on, like Sanchez, like Uzuni, honestly, right? Who, may or may not, he's started reaching the edge where maybe there's problems. The central defense, you've got Vicenen being injury prone. You've got Heinz Ike and I think Julio both on the wrong side of 30. Like, I could see some combination of all these guys reaching the point of decline to where Austin's not as good as that we think they'll be. All that to say, I mean, I'm searching for negatives here too. Like, I'm honestly so excited. Right. It's really, really hard to play the wet blanket side of things, but that seems like one that maybe there's just a combination of those in the Texas Heat that ends up biting the team.
Yeah, I mean, because if we're going to have to go and outscore teams to win games, then that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's exciting. It's maybe not what the purists would want, but I mean, that's what a lot of 2022 was. Let's not forget. Defensively, at times we weren't great, but we found a way to outscore teams. And you would look at the potential of this team and say, well, maybe they can do something similar, even if the defense is a bit of a liability.
One other thing that I know several other people have voiced their concerns about is the question of who creates the chances for this team. And so this has been asked of Nico Estevez a few different times now. And honestly, he almost seemed a little bit annoyed at the last press conference I think I asked the question actually, but he says that he seems to think that the chances can be created in the aggregate, that you don't need just that one primary chance creator. And he might be right. Trevor Allison, who I think we have a question from him later in the show, but he did some research and compiled a bunch of data off of FBref and found teams that had what he's calling one primary chance creator, and like whether or not having the primary chance creator is a necessity for success. And what he found in his research is that it doesn't necessarily lead to success. Like you don't necessarily need the one guy, but you need someone to do it, and you need at least one or two or three guys to be able to do it. So can Sabovic and Pereira reliably get the forwards into dangerous areas? Can we get Biro and Dessler into positions to help create chances? Like there's a realistic possibility that the answer to all those questions is yes, but it's still a little bit unnerving to not know exactly where the chances come from. If Lucho Acosta is on your team, you know where the chances are coming from. And if you're trying to do it in the aggregate, it's just living in the unknown is a little bit scary as a fan.
Yeah, well, obviously Uzuni and Bukhari from wide are going to be the key contributors. Centrally, well, it now appears to be Danny Pereira's, his team to take by the scruff of the neck. I think it's all set up for him to make that next step forward. And I know. There are perhaps some legitimate questions as to whether he can take that next step. And well, I think now he has that opportunity, which he really hasn't had. They've never really found the right place for him to operate consistently, and I think now he has it. Is he good? Go on.
I've just always said that like having the right partner, like the right people around him on the field, would be the thing that will help Danny Pereira the most. And he's got two really savvy operators in Sabovic and Ilie. If that ends up being the midfield three, having two guys like that who are just really smart, don't make mistakes, that allows someone like Danny to be a bit more free. And I hope that can be enough. That can be part of the solution. But again, it's all unknown.
To me, it's a different universe than the one he had with Ring and Valencia behind him. To have Sabovic and Sanchez back, it's just, okay, now's your time. Now's your chance. You have the platform behind you. Show us what you can do.
Let's go on to Keith Simon. Which of the new players do you think are best set up for success, and who is the biggest risk? In other words, who might not live up to expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think Brandon Vasquez has to be the one most set up for success, right? Like, he's familiar with the league from this country, so he doesn't have that settling in period that a lot of international players need. And if you look at his time in Mexico, a lot of people covering Monterrey attribute some of his troubles to obstacles off the field. And when he got signed there, I think his wife was pregnant and didn't come down immediately. And then when she did get there, I think they had some housing issues due to a big storm that hit there. So they just kind of had some weird situations and weren't ever quite fully settled off the field. Austin should be a much easier transition off the field just because he's American. Austin's not going to be a totally foreign place to him. And the fact that it's MLS, the league he's played in, and a coach that he's trained with, at least with the national team a little bit, and will be somewhat familiar with, I think that will let him adapt quickly on the field. Who do you guys think are the biggest risks for this team who might not live up to those expectations?
Well, I mean, you have to start with Uzuni just because of the price tag and the fact that he's the one that's kind of making the biggest move in terms of changing his entire life and his culture and everything. Can he adapt to MLS quickly enough? I think he will. I don't think he's going to be a letdown tour. I think he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. I love the way he plays. He's fast. He's dynamic. I think he has a lot of qualities that can help him thrive. But certainly, and I think if you're looking for one about whom there are questions, then you have to go with the record signing, don't you? And I agree. I think Vasquez is primed, absolutely primed. This is. I could not be more excited to have him on Austin FC, because I think he's 26, but in a way he's a low mileage 26, because he didn't really start playing in the first team regularly with Cincy until 22. 22 was his breakout season. I saw him when he was much younger with Atlanta, and he made sort of cameo roles, but he doesn't even have that much mileage for a 26-year-old, and I'm just so excited about him just wanting to show Mauricio Pochettino that he should be the guy, and he's got 18 months to show him. Less, obviously, but to have that carrot, which Uzuni also has, by the way. I mean, let's not forget he's going to be a big part of what Albania are doing, and they're just about to start World Cup qualifying as well. So, don't know if that answered any of your questions, but I also think Sabovic he could have huge upside.
Yes,
huge upside.
Sabovic is a less of a risk because it's not the huge financial investment,
right.
But it seems like we're planning on him playing a pretty big role in this midfield. So, given the questions we have about what the midfield is going to look like, what the roles are going to be there, who's going to create the chances, like he could end up being a pretty big X factor for the success of this team. So yeah, not as big of a risk on the financial side, but for his role in the team, it is still we're going to be depending on him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you, Adrian, did you ever get to call Uzuni? Did y'all cross over in La Liga at all?
No. Actually, I did. I did Granada games the year they were in the Spanish top flight. I must admit, I don't have a strong memory of him. And obviously they were facing relegation that year, so we didn't do them that often. But I definitely did them once or twice. I remember doing them in a thumping against Barcelona that we were on the wrong end of. But listen, I mean, the fact that he scored 11 goals in the Spanish top flight in a relegation season, and then we know about his goal scoring in the Spanish second division. That is you don't do that by fluke. I mean, he is a serious world-class player. It's just we've seen it before, haven't we? And there's always a question mark with making that leap to MLS. Can players do it who have a big price tag attached to them? And I believe he can. I think he's so flexible. He can play in many different positions, and that is a huge bonus as well. But he's got to go out there and do it, isn't he? I mean, there will be a question mark until he shows it.
Let's move on to this next question from Neil ATX. Neil says, "Hey guys, really appreciate the show and have learned a lot from you about soccer over the years. In his interview with Phil West, Nico Estevez downplayed traditional formations, and I've been intrigued by Kevin Morris's analysis of tactical triangles as a more meaningful way to understand team structure. With our new players now in the mix, which specific player triangles do you see being most crucial for Austin's build-up play and attacking patterns this season?" So I guess I want to start off just by clarifying something. I don't think Nico was necessarily downplaying the use of traditional formations, but was mainly just stating that the way that kind of the general public talks about formations is often not very accurate and not very useful. I think that was kind of the greater point that he was making. And if you go back to the last few years when the MLS website always put the graphic out as a 4-2-3-1, when Austin very rarely played in a 4-2-3-1. And then also just like the numbers stopped becoming useful at some point, right? So like the formations are reference points, but they're so fluid and rarely tells the whole story of the various shapes, because like a team will set up in 3 or 4 different shapes depending on what phase of play they're in. And so I just wanted to clarify that one time. But then he mentions Kevin Morris on Blue Sky had a thread which was in response to this Nico Estevez quote. And Kevin says, maybe a more interesting way to think about formations is who is forming triangles on what part of the field and what point of the triangle will they usually occupy. So Biro is in the back four in a 4-3-3, but he will usually occupy the far left point of a triangle with, let's say, Owen and Uzuni on that left side, just as an example. So to go back and answer the question, like which of these triangles do I see being crucial is, I don't know the answer, but one thing I'm really curious to see is how Estevez kind of implements these ideas and which players from the back line or the midfield are we going to see get into those more forward positions in the attacking phase of play, and which are going to be sitting a little more deep. Like, are we going to see both fullbacks push high all the time into the attack, or are we going to see one fullback high while the other stays a little deeper? I don't know what the answer is going to be, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I think a lot of this plays into the question of who's going to create the chances. And I think there's potential for a lot of different players to be the person creating a chance at any given moment, but it's going to be Estevez's job to get those guys in the right spots around the right players in moments that set them up for success. And that's kind of the trick here. And I'm very curious to see what he tries with these guys.
Yeah. That, I think I'm not surprised actually. He took a little umbrage with the question about who the main chance creator is, because to me it's you just highlighted a lot of the players. I think this is going to be what's so intriguing about this setup is there's going to be lots of options, both on both flanks and down the middle for there to be all sorts of chance creation and triangles played. I mean, with Biro on one side and Desler on the other, both of them having attacking verve and attacking intention. It opens up all sorts of possibilities, and I think Sabovic can also be a big part of any chance creation. His passing range is superb from what I've seen. I mean, just his ability to hit a long ball is something I don't think we've had. Certainly not to that degree of accuracy in our midfield before. Alex Ring thought he could, but he actually couldn't.
Alex Ring could see the pass. He couldn't always hit it.
But no, I mean, I think all the triangles you talked about will come into play, and it's TV's fault, isn't it, that we need formations. You need a graphic to put out, and this is where the players are playing, and it's 4-3-3, and I don't think there's any doubt at all that Nico Estevez leans towards what you would call a 4-3-3. I mean, you look back at his better years in Dallas, and it was the same thing. It's actually an interesting comparison. I don't know if you've done it. If you look back at that 22 season, his first in charge of Dallas, he had Areola on one side and Velasco on the other. They were both new signings that year. He had Jesus Ferreira as the number 9, who had the best seasons of his life. He had O'Brien also as a fill-in. That was his front line. He played 4-3-3 almost entirely with kind of a Paxton Pomacall and Sebastian Lletget kind of defensive midfielders, but it could also create too. It's a similar sort of setup.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that gets me excited about this team, is looking at that exact squad's midfield and how they were dynamic and athletic. I don't know that this group is necessarily as athletic as that group was, but when you're looking at the nous to be in the right spots at the right time, and then the ability to play those long balls, to play those big diagonal switches and things like that, I am encouraged by what we can do in transition. And so you think about Bukhari, Uzuni, and Vasquez running the other way with Ilie or Sabovic being able to play those direct balls into them. That is where I'm like, okay, I don't really have that many concerns about this group. It's when we get into that final finishing shape in the attacking third and the other team is bunkered into that box. That's when I'm like, okay, in this moment, who plays that ball? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And I think that you just mentioned it briefly. We haven't talked about it a ton, but I think I'm most interested to see the role that Bukhari plays in this, because like we both know among that top three that Uzuni and Vasquez are finishers, right? They're guys going to run at the post. They're guys going to want to be in front of goal. So I think Bukhari's contributions to the front line are going to be maybe the most interesting because he's a player that's a different player than those other two for sure.
I think we know exactly what they're going to try to do with Bukhari. My concern is how often can we get him in that situation? Can we get him into the spaces? Because we're going to want him to go 1v1 and either get a shot off or play a ball into one of those other two guys. And like once we get the ball to him in the right spot, the rest, like I don't have any doubts about like that being a good situation to be in. It's how often can we get him in that situation? And that's that goes back again to the playmaker.
Yeah. I think he's going to have a big year, Bukhari. I love the fact that I always enjoy players coming in at the start of their second year, having had a taster and a feeler for the league. I think his few months from last year will stand him in great stead, and he will hit the ground running.
All right, let's go to this one from Alex Bondi. I love these questions that the setup to the question is most of the question. So I'm going to start with this. Matt Doyle, laminated axe grinder and infamous ex-goal truther, his words, not mine, said that Austin needs to score 65 goals, or what are they even doing with the recent transfers and record-breaking fees? Didn't draw a line in the sand for any other big spenders. How does this make you feel? Do you think Austin needs to hit that mark to have value return on the signings? And to kind of the end point here is 65 goals is what Austin scored in 2022. So do you think Austin has to score as many goals this year as they did in 2022 to make this offseason a success?
I mean, for reference, 65 goals the last 2 years puts you top 5 in the Supporter Shield standings most of the time. And so I see Matt Doyle's point in that, okay, we saw our 3 DPs are very expensive and all playing across the front line. This team should score goals, but I think 65 is kind of an unreasonable bar to set.
Yeah, again, that 2022 season is such a unique case. Do we want to be scoring 60? I mean, we also conceded 49 that year. Remember? I mean, it was like, do we think that should be the benchmark? I don't know. I get his point. Yes, you want a return for the money spent, but I'd be happier to score 10 less and only concede 30. Put it that way. So.
All right, let's move on to a question from Trevor Allison. Trevor asked, what's something that you hope we can do now that we have a lot more depth than in the past? Something like sub earlier or at halftime, use more rotation, flexible formations, etc. I mean, my answer is kind of all of the above. Like, simply put, like having more quality players and different kinds of players on the bench gives you the ability to make subs that can make a difference from both quality and style of play wise. So most of Austin's existence, the subs have been one or more of the following, which are much worse than the guy they're replacing. They could have been the same kind of player as the guy they're replacing, or the subs were non-existent, forcing us to play guys out of position. That's not going to be the case as much this year. Yeah, we're not right. The highest ceiling team in the league. We're not the deepest team in the league, but compared to what we've had, especially in 2023, and then in the attack in 2024, like this is so much more of a complete team. And I think that will give Estevez the chance to start different guys for different game plans. Or if a game's going one way and we want it to go another way, there's a guy on the bench who can help make that happen, as opposed to there's a guy on the bench, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if Hada, O'Brien, and Owen Wolff are coming off the bench rather than starting, as you say, it's a completely different world for Nico than what we had last year. Many different options. Even amongst the frontline starters. I mean, the fact that Uzuni can play anywhere up front really intrigues me. I mean, it opens up so many options, and obviously Bukhari can play either side, Hader O'Brien can play either side. There's a lot of flexibility. So yeah, intriguing.
Yeah, I think the big one for me is the last part of the positional flexibility, the fact that we can see different formations depending upon who's healthy, how many times we played that week, what the opponent excels at, or things that we can exploit that the opponent is doing. And the fact that you have people that are positionally flexible and like good at doing all those different things, as opposed to Alex Ring at center back because he had a pulse, I think is one of the other most exciting parts of the 2025 Austin roster.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to these questions from Robert Miller. Robert Miller sent us a
13.
baker's dozen of questions, which honestly I don't mind because it allows us to kind of pick our favorite ones. So honestly, Robert, keep doing it. If any other folks want to submit more, that's great too. But Jeremiah, you picked some of your favorites here.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick two of these that are on the more projection side, and then I'm gonna save one of them for. I think after we do the break, we're gonna get into sort of a list of random questions for Adrian. But we'll start with the actual soccer-related questions. This ties back a little bit to the goal expectations. Uzuni plus Vasquez, 30 goals for this season, over under. How do we feel about that? It's an aggressive number, obviously, but it's one that's like it's not so aggressive that you have to think about it, which makes it a good number.
Yeah, give the quick answer here, Adrian, and then I'll pitch a different number for you.
If you're asking me as a seasoned better, and that was the line I was facing, which side of that line I would take the under. But that doesn't mean to say I don't hope and think there's a chance they can go over 30. I just think that's a big number. That's a big number for one guy who's totally new to the league and another returning. I could see Vasquez getting 15 easily. Uzuni's a bit more of a question mark.
Yeah,
in my mind.
Let's say the number is 25.
Then I'd have to give that serious thought. I mean, I think that is the line. That's your Vegas. That's your Vegas odds makers nailing the line, NFL style.
Yeah,
25 is the line.
I think at 25, I might still be taking the under just because Uzuni is new. But if you set it to like 23, that might make me sweat a little bit more. And I mean, even if I bet that under, I'd be praying that I lost that bet. But
right.
But to even think that it's a possibility that we have guys that could score even 10 goals apiece, like we've never had 2 double-digit scores, right? Sometimes not even had 1 double-digit scorer.
Right, as recently as this year. Yeah.
Maxi pushed us close with his 9 in 22, while Driussi was getting his 25. But I guess the two of them went over 30, didn't they? But
Robert's next question is, what counts as success this season? Playoffs, conference finals? I'd say playoffs is bare minimum, but given the amount of new players, the quickness of the rebuild, like I think the quickness says like you can't set it too high, but I feel like just the playoffs is almost too low for this team.
Yeah,
I would say top 7 is success.
I would go even a step further and say fifth or higher, top 5. I would say, especially given where we are in terms of what everyone else in the West seems to have done. We've had one of the most active seasons. Other teams seem to have headed in a different direction. So, top 5, is that doable? And so not just to make the playoffs, but to kind of have maybe even a home playoff game would be a decent target for me.
What do you say, Jeremiah?
I think it's my goal. Home playoff game, whatever spot that is. Because one, do we actually know for sure the playoff format for MLS for this season going into it? So whatever the format is, if we could get a playoff game at home, I feel like that would be good. And then if you never know how those games are going to turn out. So like I don't necessarily rely on the results of that as much as having a season where it feels like a strong regular season.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremiah, you want to take a break before we get to the next one?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, we're going to come back. We'll still be with Adrian. We're still doing listener questions. And hang tight.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Moon Tower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels. Just a pause while we consider the federal government, to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and Austin FC's march to the 2025 playoffs. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We're going to get into kind of the more grab baggy list of questions here, which still includes one of Robert Miller's, right, Jeremiah?
Yes, let's start with this one. I'm super interested to hear y'all's perspectives on this. This is best barbecue in Austin. This is like asking about religion or politics, I feel like. So, and we're going to put Adrian on the spot. And you can't be like, I love this and that, and I love whatever. But yeah, you're going to have to draw a line in the sand. Favorite barbecue restaurant in Austin?
I want to know what Besard Sabovic's favorite barbecue in Austin is right now. He must have one already. Well, I got turned on to a kind of a barbecue that apparently the locals all know about and out-of-towners generally don't. But that's Styles, switching Styles, Styles Barbecue. Really superb, really superb. They only have like 2 or 3 around town, but the one on North Lamar I was at recently, I was blown away. I also sneakily like Rudy's too. I know that may be a controversial pick, but
Rudy's, like, I think you have to put it in categories of like barbecue. You're gonna wait in line,
right,
for an hour or drive for an hour, and barbecue you can just walk in and eat,
right.
And like Rudy's is not bad for that second category.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
If you put it
serves a purpose.
If you put it up against Franklin's or the ones out in Lockhart that you drive an hour and then wait an hour for, it probably doesn't compare very much. But yeah, Jeremiah, do you have a strong take on this one?
So, I mean, Franklin really is, I think, my very favorite, but it is such a pain. I do like Style Switch, and we actually went there with Aggie from the Fighting Leslie's. Landon and I did right before Christmas. And they had like a different special every day, which was good. But Terry Black's on Barton Springs has my favorite brisket in town. So that would be my answer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Terry Black's is like the best of the walk in and eat on a random day. They're also open in the evening, which a lot of them are not. I think Franklin's is probably my answer, but like, who has time for that?
No. That's the thing.
I haven't been here in many years, but La Barbecue is one that I had been to several years ago.
Great,
that you can go. We went on like Saturday for lunch, waited half an hour, got food, and it was on par with the best I've had in the region. Yeah. I'm not going to claim to be an expert though. There's several places in town that people really like that I haven't even been to. So
right. And I do remember being blown away by everything down in Lockhart, but I can't remember the name of any of it.
Yeah,
but it just anywhere in that main square is fantastic.
I think I've been to 2 or 3 of the like prime Lockhart ones, and they're all great.
Yeah, it's like the line point. So I can walk to Interstellar, which is always like on the Texas Monthly Top 10 list now, but I've never eaten there because I walk somewhere close and I'm like, oh, there's it's 10 in the morning and the line's 2 hours long. I'll just get a taco or whatever. Like I don't need it that bad.
Yeah.
How about
what
this?
else we got, Jeremiah?
Oh, let's go to this Sean Collins question. So we're going to set this up with one of the pieces of news that we got over the weekend that is just delightful in terms of, fan engagement in Copa Tejas is that Owen Wolff. No, Owen is the only Wolf still in Austin. Josh Wolff is an assistant coach in Houston. Gavin Wolff got transferred, I guess, from the second team of the academy to Houston also, and Austin holds some sell-on rights if Gavin ever goes to Europe. The question from Sean is, if Owen scores a banger against Houston at Q2, is this the loudest that the fans ever are in stadium history?
So he scores against his dad,
yeah,
at Q2, yeah. That would be pretty awesome. I got to say, I don't know I don't know if it would be the loudest. It would have to go some to be the loudest. I mean, we've had some loud moments, but that would be truly epic, wouldn't it?
Owen has never scored at Q2. He scored some beautiful goals, but none of them have been at Q2. So I think everything else aside, it would be a big moment for Owen to score. If you bring in his dad's stuff in there, I think there will be a little bit of spiteful aggression from parts of the crowd. But then also just for Owen, like Owen deserves that goal as well. Like, there are some people who treated him extremely unfairly, who a lot of them have come around at this point, but I'm sure Owen, if any of that got to him, he is not forgotten. This city needs to show Owen Wolff that we love him and give him that love if he ever gets to do something like this.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It was a really, really, really tough situation for him, and I was actually surprised they held on to him. I mean, I remember Josh, even back at the end of 22, talking about having to move Owen on because it just was too difficult. But they didn't.
I'm sure sporting director has a different opinion, though. It's like, this is our top prospect. We're not just going to get rid of him because
absolutely.
It's hard.
Yeah, and he may well blossom, which would be how amazing would that be if this was the final part of the Owen Wolff story of Austin, that he just went out and had an amazing 2025. Unshackled. So we'll see.
All right, what else we got, Jeremiah?
We got ATX Bergkamp Lover 6969-420, which I have to read the full name of every time. And do not think too long about this question. Is Rodolfo Borrell the most important human since Johann Gutenberg? Who else between the guy that invented the printing press and the sporting director of Austin FC? I don't know. Do y'all have an answer for this one?
So, Jeremiah, I think maybe I'm giving ATX Bergkamp Lover 6969-420 too much credit, but I feel like you have said Genghis Khan on similar questions as like the most influential people, but he gave a timeline of post Johannes Gutenberg, which would be after Genghis Khan. You're the history buff here, I think, Jeremiah. What's your answer?
I probably set him up for that, so now I feel bad about that. Oh, God, who's the guy? Thomas Paine. The guy that wrote the stuff that like invented the whole free market or whatever, the English philosopher. I'm going with that guy.
Yeah.
What about you, Adrian? Most important person since the printing press.
Yeah. he is something else. I tell you, he really is. It was kind of a slow burn with him to start off with, isn't it? But it's just this off season has been. It's been the true uncorking of Mr. Borrell, and but I also think the ownership group needs to take some plaudits here. I mean, they've taken their lumps over the years, and sometimes rightly so. But I think they've put their big boy pants on. I mean, this club has grown up, and maybe Rodo was the spark, but it needed buy-in from the ownership group, or none of this would have happened. So, and the front office too. I mean, it's a collective effort, and I think Rodo maybe was the touchstone or the spark for all of that, but it wasn't just him.
Adrian, I'd be curious to get your take on: do you think Claudio Reyna would have gotten this much support from the front office? Do you think something changed, or is it just a sign of the times that MLS is moving and Austin feels like they need to keep up, or is this? Does this have to do with Borrell? Did Borrell tell them, like, I can make this team a winner, but you have to give me the resources, and they believed him?
It's a very good question, one we won't ever truly know the answer to, because I'm sure Claudio Reyna wanted to spend in a similar sort of way. And let's not forget, he did bring Driussi in at the time. That was the biggest investment Anthony Precourt had ever made in a single player by a long shot. So he did persuade him to do that. I just think everything, once they've made the decision to go away from Josh Wolff, I think everything became the ownership group, I think, did hear the growing level of concern from the fan base over the last 2 years. They couldn't not hear it. Now, did that prompt them to act? Was it a factor? Maybe it was a factor. Maybe all along this was part of the plan. We're going to get through 4 years, and then year 5 we're going to go crazy. We're going to spend like Atlanta and LAFC did in year 1. A lot of us, wondered why they didn't spend like that in year 1, but they didn't. They took a different path, and now, for a combination of factors, of which Rodolfo Borrell is certainly one, they have decided that they do need to spend, and it's the correct decision. Would Claudio Reyna have got the same decision out of them? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, he had just as many contacts in world football, if not more, but he didn't have the same level of purse strings. What Rodo, I still think the most amazing move that he made in this offseason was to get the money he did for Driussi. That to me was the key.
Absolutely.
Once you can get 10 million for that guy, I mean, Cucho Hernandez just went for 16.
Yeah.
Only 6 more than Driussi. To get 10 million for him made everything else possible. So if that was his biggest contribution, then that was a massive one.
All right, let's go on Alex Modney. I think I'm interested in y'all's opinion on this too. So what's your opinion of the rumored season schedule realignment to Europe's? Do you think the pros outweigh the cons? So if we go to a European-style schedule, less of a calendar year schedule for Major League Soccer?
I would say selfishly, yes, because I'm tired of going to games at Q2 in July when it's over 100 degrees. If we went to the European schedule, there would be much less of that. I know there is, though, like real concerns about the teams up north where it is cold. And Adrian, you've lived in one of these places and covered a team that plays in a place like that. What is your take from that perspective, from a more northern perspective?
I mean, from an overall, 10,000 feet view of the league and how it interacts with the rest of the world, it would be amazing if we could sync calendars. Like, how is it going to work? How is it going to work? How are the 10 teams north of the 45th parallel or whatever it is? How are they? Are we not going to play any home games there in January and February? Is there going to be a winter break? I am intrigued though. I really am. I think there's a world in which it can happen. Maybe there has to be a long winter break like there are in some like Germany used to have a 6-week break. And then if you kind of finessed it and some of the teams up there only played road games for a month, maybe it could be done. But I think the overall net benefit to the league in terms of syncing up with everything else would be phenomenal.
And one of the primary reasons is because of the transfer window, right? There's
True.
FIFA rules about how far apart transfer windows can be and things like that, which necessitates MLS's mid-season transfer window to be pretty much at the end of the season. And so it takes away the ability for any team to course correct halfway through the year. If things are going south in July, they're probably going to stay that way because you don't have time to bring in players who are going to have enough time to really change your trajectory. And that's a big problem. And you hear folks reporting about sporting directors saying, like, not only is it not enough time, but the window's not matching up, keep us from getting players that we want because they're waiting on other options to come through and our window closes before the other one's open and things like that. So there's a lot of pros, but I think, the weather thing is a thing to deal with, but I think it would be worth it. And again, I'm probably seeing this through Austin tinted glasses as well.
No, the transfer window is huge. I mean, the fact that we haven't been aligned. I mean, think about it. This is really the first off season where we've had this level of arrival at this time of year. All our major signings in the past have been in the summer because that's when more players are available, and then you end up getting a player in July or August like we did for Driussi first time around, and then they get a few games at the tail end of that year, and then they have an off season, and then it's almost start again. So just to get that aligned, to have the main transfer off season be the same as the rest of the world would be massive.
All right, we got Matt Killingsworth here. This is a question about player names printed on kits. His is specifically, which is worse, to get your favorite player who doesn't play for your team printed on your new kit, or print a player who left the club years ago in the new kit. just like, I don't know. I feel like Landon, you've definitely expressed opinions about players on kits, and that not being a fan.
I'm fine with it. I don't have trouble with anybody else doing it. I have a
it's
hard
for
time
yourself.
doing
Okay.
it personally.
So
Adrian, my
what works
reasoning
for
being
you?
is because I'm now older than most of these guys, and it feels weird to do it. So I think I have an Andres Iniesta Barca jersey that I bought in 2010. That
Right.
I think that is the only kit I have that has a name on it.
Mm. That's a pretty cool one to have, though, if you're going to have one, you know.
But I think
kudos to you.
I think the answer to the question is easy. Like, let's say this was a punishment for a bet. I think getting a player who doesn't play for the team, this would be like getting a Messi Austin FC jersey, which those things have been cited. I don't know if in Austin, but in other MLS markets, there have been sightings of Messi put on the back of, I don't know if this is right, but like an Atlanta jersey or a Revs jersey or something. Like that exists in this league. I think that's atrocious. A player who left the club years ago, I think that could be kind of fun, like as a tribute kind of thing.
I'm holding on to my Rodney Redes shirt. I know that's gonna have collector's value in a few years.
I know Scott Specht has started a tradition of buying the new season's kit and then getting the name of a player who left the club the previous year. And so I think he got a Redes. Which was it? Las Voces? Was that the newest? No, the Dillo kit. I think he got a Redes Dillo kit, and he's planning on getting a Rigoni kit of the new one this year.
Yeah,
which I love the commitment to that bit. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. If you're gonna go for it, that makes sense. Yeah, the only two that I have with players on them, I've like because I didn't want them to leave. I have a bunch of Steven Gerrard Liverpool kits from back in the old days. And then I have a bunch of Virgil van Dijk ones now because I feel like, the worst thing in the world is when you buy a kit for a guy and then they're gone right in the next year. Like if you'd have bought buy a Cucho kit last year or whatever, and then you're kind of stuck. So I've always been like, who can I trust will still be on the team when the kit finally comes in that maybe I can wear for a little while. This next one's for Landon, and that is after Dessler. Well, we can all answer this though. After Mikel Dessler. Who is the second most...
This is from Tom Halleck.
Yeah, from Tom Halleck. Who's the second most Landon player on the team after Mikel Dessler? How do we define the Landoniest? Landoniest is actually the term. What makes somebody Landony?
I mean, Mikel Dessler is a prime example of like the guy that the casual fan who doesn't watch a lot of soccer is probably not going to have their eye caught by Mikel Dessler. But the really savvy, smart soccer fan, if you say like, watch this guy, you watch him for half a game, you're like, oh yeah, he's quality. Like that's my kind of guy. Like I guess like Busquets on those classic Barca teams. Like I don't remember who said this, but it was like if you watch the game, you don't see Busquets, but if you watch Busquets, you see the game. Like those are the kind of guys that I like to watch. But I wanted to kind of like, we could answer this for each other. And like, who's the most Jeremiah player? And my, like the most Liverpool, like balls to the wall, all energy, like all gas, no brakes. I feel like it's got to be Uzuni. Like that's going to be the most Jeremiah player coming in. Is that fair?
I can agree with that.
With
absolutely. One? Yeah, I'm absolutely good with that. Yeah.
And then Adrian, who is like do you have like an all-time favorite player?
Like for any club ever,
any team, any country, any league, just like who's the guy over your whole soccer watching career of like, this is what I think it should be. This is what I want to watch.
I grew up absolutely idolizing an English creative midfielder by the name of Glenn Hoddle, who played for Spurs mainly, but he also played for England. And he was a classic ball playing number 10. The art of the pass was just made into something exquisite by him. He just kind of caressed the ball and just always did something unexpected and surprising. He was a real character too. So not the most famous player in the world to have as an idol, but I grew up just idolizing him. And then actually he started his managerial career coming down to my local team in Swindon, and actually joined as a player manager. So he started, and that just kind of was the ultimate. So Hoddle for me, because he just played the game the way you dreamt of being able to play it yourself.
I think that answer makes picking you an Austin FC player complicated for reasons we've said many times,
especially right now
on this show. Like maybe Sabovic, would that be your speed?
I do. I really like what I see from Sabovic, and I just I don't want to set expectations too high, but I really think he could be absolutely tremendous.
Yeah,
I mean, he could make the league sit up and take notice. He's that good.
Yeah,
from what I've seen.
To be clear, any of my doubts about him are not about quality. It's about profile and fit within the players around him. But quality-wise, I am also quite high on him and Uzuni, both of them.
Yeah, and we got him for nothing. I mean, great piece of business.
Oh yeah. So Jeremiah, I'll let you pick. Outside of Dessler, who would you say is the most Landon-y player?
Well, didn't you call Sabovic the Dessler of midfielders like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So ignoring both those guys, I was going to ask about it. I almost answered the very first question about a guy that we have not talked about all night, and this is Dupersarski. Can you see him being that kind of guy?
I do like him. I'm not sure how much he's going to play. He's a bit more of like a wrecking ball kind of midfielder. And so I do like that as well. But I think if I were to pick the next most Landon-y player, I think it would also be either Sabovic or maybe Ilie. Ilie is one of those like Busquets-ish players where he just doesn't mess up, doesn't do anything wrong, and he doesn't always stick out. But if you watch him, you can see a lot of what's going around him.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'll just add this on Ilie, not anything to do with looking like Landon or being a Landon thing, but he wins where he plays. Those teams win.
Yeah.
Kansas City. You look at what they did with Ilie, and what they did as soon as he left. It speaks for itself. LAFC the same. I know he's 34, but I still think he's a great get as well. A great get. Those three midfielders, Sabovic, Sanchez, Dupersarski, between the three of them, that is some tremendous business that we've done.
I think this is going to be our last question before we wrap it up. This is from Trevor Allison. This is a bit of a fashion question. So what colors would you want to see for a secondary kit that are not any variation of verde or black?
I was looking kind of into past kits of famous teams. Jeremiah, are there any off-the-wall color kits for Liverpool that you've really liked?
There was a third kit that was like purple and kind of a bright orange.
Oh, that one! I remember that one.
That was a third
cool.
kit. Yeah. I have Virgil van Dijk's version of that kit, obviously. But yeah, that's my favorite of the third Liverpool kits. And I was thinking about that's being maybe a good option for Austin.
Yeah, it's one of the only times Liverpool has like gone completely off script as well, because they've done yellows and greens, but those are in versions of their crest, and so it's not completely off the wall. I was like kind of just looking at different color possibilities. Like you could do a Texas themed kit, but like red and blue are probably not possible because of SC Dallas. A bright orange color is probably not possible because of Houston.
No.
I saw someone in the responses to this question in the thread suggest a burnt orange for UT. Like, do y'all think a UT kit is a good idea and B even possible?
I don't think any orange is going to fly. Be it burnt orange or you just can't. Even though I love the color and I love the UT colors. It's the dynamo, man. You can't have any orange on your kit. You just can't. I like the purple idea though. I've always loved purple anyway. I still think that's an underutilized kit color. I mean, what is it? Just Orlando in our league who really have purple as the primary color. You could do something with that.
Jeremiah, on the burnt orange kit, like ignoring the orange, like the dynamo of it all, do you think it would be a good idea to do burnt orange, or do you think that, like, my take, like I actually don't like that color, and I also have no connection to the University of Texas, as is true for a lot of the people who are in that stadium on Saturday nights. Like, do you think it would even be popular or a good idea to go with that color?
Yeah, that my concern would be it would annoy so many of the people who are diehards who didn't go to UT. And when you look at one of the big propositions of this team being like this, the team that brings everybody in Austin together, whether you went to the University of Texas or not, right? This is the club for the whole city. Like, I almost feel like that's flying in the face of it if Austin decided to try to do something like that as a kit. They would probably sell a lot to Longhorns fans, and they would probably annoy everybody else that comes to those games. And I feel like that's a bigger percentage than people who are UT fans.
Yeah. The purple, though, I do like this idea. And there's, like, the city of the Violet Crown is a nickname of Austin. I looked up history of this because I think I had looked it up before and didn't remember, so I looked it up again today. Late 1800 writers O. Henry is credited with coining that term. It's like, so there is like historical significance to it. It's a long running thing that has been connected with the city. It's also like, it's not a problematic color for all the reasons we discussed before. And so, like, I think that is almost likely at some point that they do a purple kit. I don't know how soon that would be, but I think that would be cool. I was looking at just like publicly recognizable places or things or institutions in Austin that have colors associated with them. And the only other decent idea I had was doing like a bluish kit, like the cooler side of blue, like a topaz turquoise kind of look, and doing like a Barton Springs kit.
A Barton Springs, yeah.
I think that could be cool, but I think there's a lot of colors that are just kind of either don't make sense or off limits for various reasons.
Yeah.
Is that all of them, Jeremiah?
That's all of them, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, Adrian, thanks so much. It's a pleasure as always. I still have to pinch myself every time I remember that that you're just a guy I know and can ask to come on my stupid podcast. We're always very, very grateful to have you.
Well, I am always psyched to come on with you guys. I really enjoy what you do, and I'm so looking forward to sharing in the excitement of the season, just being there at Q2 as often as I can, and I just think it's going to be a season that we've waited for quite some time, and I think it's gonna all come to fruition. So psyched to be here for it.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. All right. We want to thank Adrian Healey for being so gracious to give us some of his time. We want to thank our Patreon members for all of your support and for sending us these wonderful questions. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us online, join the Patreon, and you can make us answer silly questions or smart questions, whichever you choose. We are at your mercy. Thanks so much for listening. Next week, we'll be back to cover the Coachella Valley tournament and talk about any other Austin FC news that breaks. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Because they love cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.